Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Public Works Finance Committee of the Moscow City Council. It is October 10th. Got a dream team up here of Councilors Laughlin, Lewis, and Terusio. To our left is Bill Belknap, our city supervisor, and with us already is Sarah Banks, but you don't get to do anything yet. Our first item is the approval of the Public Works and Finance Committee meeting minutes from September 26th.
Look great.
Yes, no concerns.
And I have to abstain because I think someone out in the audience took care of me that day, so I appreciate that. So it's approved,
but they looked great from what I could read.
Okay.
Okay, so I stand by it.
The one, yeah, we're good. The second item is the disbursement report for September 2022. Now, Sarah Banks.
All right, so looking at the accounts payable report for month ending September 30, 2022, all expenditures totaled $5,346,249.86. Our largest expenditure was payroll, $1,186,017. And we actually had quite a few expenditures in September, so it's going to take me some time to go through the large ones. So we had a booster station phase 2 pump station design and bid construction management payment for $66,331.97. We had 5 payments for our ARPA nonprofit payment agreement, and those grant payments were at $25,000 apiece. We had a police facility payment number 22, and that was $314,405.32. We made our $1 million contribution payment to the ice rink. Yes. And then we had a partial for a new dump bed and sander for a streets vehicle in the amount of $85,200. And with the same vehicle, we purchased a 10-inch stainless steel conveyor spreader, and that was $62,725. We had D in Mountain View along with B in Cleveland Street improvements for $280,873.07. And then we did some asphalt rubber chip seal for $305,339.50. We purchased the restroom for Indian Hills Park for $65,409. And then we had some water and street improvements to the 6th Street Bridge over Paradise Creek for $230,014.
We were busy.
Yes, and it's a lot to say.
It's a lot of money to spend.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions?
I have 2 really quick ones. So
Sure.
the ARPA money goes out once they've also submitted their grant agreement end of the contract, right? Like the ARPA, because I'm trying to remember if these are all the ones that we approved, and then some are listed in major expenditures, some aren't. But any of the ones that are going through are from entities that have returned what we needed for them to be able to receive it, right? Is that
correct? They
part of
would have to execute the grant agreement first before the funds are dispersed.
Okay, beautiful. I couldn't remember what the flow was for that. And then, and maybe this is a David question for later, but I saw we've got Skyhawks on there, and I'm glad that's been around since I was a kid. So the sports academy, but it's also not a super cheap one. So I guess I can't remember if we pay them and then we're reimbursed through registration fees to participate in things like the Skyhawks, and then any other outside sports academy things that we do.
Councilor Lewis, I'm afraid I'll have to touch base with
You're
Chris
good.
Morrison on the rec side.
I don't have concerns. I just couldn't remember.
Off the top of my head.
I love it.
Thank you.
And I'm glad it's still around. So those were the 2 questions I had.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So are we good to approve the accounts payable report? Good with that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yep,
awesome.
Consent.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, and you can use we approve the use of the digital signatures too. I
Perfect.
just saw that in the action item.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Should probably read that
Oh,
before I
yes.
just do this. Okay, our third item is the Woodbury First Edition Final Planned Unit Development and Final Plat. Mike Ray.
Hi, Mike.
How are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, good, good.
So before you today, we have the review of the Woodbury First Edition. This is the final plat and final PUD request. So just a little bit of background. September of last year, City Council conducted a public hearing and approved really 5 actions. There was an annexation of a 21.73 acre property. generally located north of Sloniker, east of Arborcrest, and south of Trail. There's a comp plan land use designation. It was currently designated as auto urban residential, and the combination was auto urban residential and suburban commercial upon annexation. And then within the county, it was currently designated as agricultural forestry, and it was rezoned to the R2 and neighborhood business zones. And then the preliminary plat and PUD, 21.73 acres, 74 lots ranging from 3,794 to 17,973 square feet in size. Within the neighborhood business, there was 7 lots. R2 contained 67. So there's really no conditions placed upon the comp plan land use designation, rezone, PUD. And then with the preliminary plat, there's 3 conditions that were recommended. The first was a left turn lane eastbound Mountain View onto Sloniker Drive be evaluated by the applicant to determine whether or not it's warranted. And if so, the applicant's responsible for the construction of that turn lane. And then the second was related to mitigation of Mountain View Road, pretty much from the Hamilton Low Aquatic Center all the way up to Sloniker Drive. And then the applicant would be responsible for 50% of the construction costs associated with those improvements. And then that access shall be restricted to the property from Sloniker Drive for emergency services access only until all required public infrastructure is completed in accordance with the approved development agreement. And then on September 1st of this year, the applicant submitted the final subdivision plat, final PUD to be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission as well as City Council. So just to recall, the subject property, 21.73 acres in size, highlighted in red at the center of your screen. You can see the current city limits boundary in the purple dashed line. Blackwood subdivision, which is Sloniker Drive to the south. We got Lanny Drive, Peekaboo Estates subdivision running east-west, Orchard to the west there, Arborcrest to the northwest, and Trail to the north. So looking at the comprehensive plan land use designation that was adopted upon annexation, you have auto urban residential, which is a lighter shade of yellow, and then you've got a suburban commercial designation, a small pocket there in the northwest corner. So this was the zoning that was adopted upon annexation as well. So R2 zone, and then that small pocket of neighborhood business to the northwest. So this is really a larger plan subdivision, master plan subdivision, pretty much a new urbanist themed subdivision. And this is going to be the first edition of a larger 80-acre property. You can see kind of in the lighter shade gray on your screen there. So this brings us to the preliminary approval. So this was the preliminary plat that was approved by council. You can see Sloniker Drive heading to the north there. Woodbury Drive would be the other public street. You can see that heading west and then heading north. Also consists of other private streets. So those are the 2 public streets, but there are other private streets that serve the proposed development. There is a center green here to the north. Some other open space that's located around the subdivision, as well as a pretty intricate linear pathway system that goes through the development as well. This is the stormwater detention pond here in the southwest corner. And this is Ashton Lane. This is actually another public street. It was private at the time. This went through the preliminary plat, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the presentation. So this is the final plat that the applicant submitted. You can see essentially the same configuration as far as the roadway, street network, as well as open space network through the subdivision. There has been an increase in lots, so it went from 74 to 79 lots. Those have been dispersed throughout the subdivision. They would actually be the rear of those lots. They're fronting on this center green here. And so as far as the street presence, there were a couple lots added here in order to be able to face Sloniker and provide much more of a street presence on that street for those lots. This is the plan unit development plan. This is the site plan that was submitted for preliminary approval. There was really 4 lot types: neighborhood business, cottage, Fort Russell, and garden lots. There was a little bit of concern after the preliminary approval on the name Fort Russell by some members of the community. And so the applicants moved on from that name. And so now the new name's neighborhood business, cottage, garden, and estate lots. And so listen to the feedback and change the name, switch them around a little bit as far as the garden lots. moving up in density and the estate lots becoming those larger lots. So this is the site plan, the revised site plan for the final PUD. And you can see similar configuration, almost identical to the preliminary approvals. There is a little bit of shifting as far as the lot types in certain locations. You can see they were kind of grouped in certain areas here. The applicant's chosen to intermingle those a little bit more, so you get more house styles mixed in with, throughout the subdivision instead of just in one particular area.
And to clarify, if it's okay, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the garden lots are not meant to be for gardens. It's what they're naming the size of the lot.
It's just the name of the lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the bright green things?
Oh, the yellow ones.
Yellow parking?
That there was a 25 off-street parking spaces that were
Oh,
required
okay.
that the applicant included within their preliminary approval, and they provided 25 as well with the final.
Can you go to the next one? Is the top one there a private park?
It is, yeah.
So what makes something a private park versus a city park?
Well, it'd be maintained by a homeowners association as part of the development.
And does it mean that people can't access it then?
It's still open to the public, as
Okay.
far as it's my understanding. Yeah,
But they're in charge of maintaining it.
they're in charge of maintaining it. Yep, homeowners association, similar to all the other open space linear paths within the subdivision. It'll be maintained by the homeowners association as well as the private streets.
Okay.
They provided some sample house plans. These were the ones that were submitted in the preliminary approval. So these are the cottage plans, floor plan there. They've also provided some additional plans. So these are new as part of the final PUD, just to provide a little bit more detail. These are cottage as well. So similar in architectural style, about the same, similar sizing. And then this was obviously part of the preliminary approval. They still have the name Fort Russell on there, but they've updated those. And so now these are referred to as the garden lots, and you have the floor plan there, about 2,700 square feet.
Wasn't there a time when there were villages? I thought it was cottages and then villages and then Fort Russell. And then did we lose those two? I mean,
They were referring to, so the neighborhood business, pretty much around the private park, the center green, those were being referred to as the village lots.
okay.
So it was either neighborhood business lots or village lots. They were the same. And so these were, I think, previously referred to as the garden lots. These will be the estate lots now, so much larger home design. These are the elevations that were originally submitted. Really wide floor plan here. And so if you noticed on the site plan, there's quite a few, especially on the east side of Slonaker. A lot of those lots were really deep, but not that wide. And so this is another example. The applicants provided an updated elevation and floor plan, which would pretty much serve those lots. Really kind of a deep floor plan and design for this house.
Could you go back 3
Sure.
to the very beginning one again? Keep going, please. Keep going. One more. Another one.
Okay, that's
So it looks
6.
to me like, whatever it was. It seems like the initial ones used a lot more zero scale. Is that an accurate assertion?
I mean, these are really just the depictions of what the house is going to look like, not necessarily the landscaping. That the owner developer is certainly here. He could discuss those. I think
Is it-
a large portion is supposed to be Y-scaped instead of providing a yard, especially on the smaller lots.
It's just curious because the pictures, let me just clarify that one, because the picture, and as it grows, it seems like there's more grass on them. So at some point, I think it would be nice if he would just address that issue for us.
We'll bring the owner up
Yeah,
after this, correct?
Okay.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Any other questions on these? No?
Oh, no, thank you.
And this was the setback table that was originally submitted. You can see the setbacks for the different types of lots there. So essentially 7-foot front, 7-foot rear on the neighborhood business, cottage, Fort Russell lots, and then increase to 10 in the front, 10 in the rear for those what would be estate lots now, and 7 feet on the side. So there's been a little bit of modification there. So they've reduced from 7 to 5 on those first 3 types of lots in the front and the rear. And then the side yard on the estate lots went from 7 to 5, just to be more consistent. Typically within all of our zoning districts, the side yard minimum is 5 feet. And so just to be consistent there, but I can explain a little bit on the reduction in the setbacks for the front and the rear. So this is an example of one of the private streets, Piketty Circle. You can see the dash line there on the north. There's a public utility easement. So that's for provided franchise utilities as well as our water and sanitary sewer. 5 feet on the north and 9 feet on the south. It was originally anticipated that that was going to be 5 feet on the north and 5 feet on the south, and that needed to be increased. And so it's shifting the house plan a little bit. And that's for the reason there. This is Ashton Lane. So I mentioned this before. This is now a public one-way street instead of a private one-way street. And this was the original plan. You can see sidewalk on one side, 12-foot travel lane, 8-foot parking, and then 7-foot tree lawn and 5-foot sidewalk. And this is the new public street section, 5-foot sidewalk, 5-foot tree lawn, 23-foot wide surface, which includes parking on one side, and then 5-foot tree lawn, 5-foot sidewalk on the other. So getting back to those conditions, we got the left-hand turn lane onto Slonaker. The applicants provided that detail, so it was warranted. You can see that's sheet C10, I believe, in your packet. And then the improvements to Mountain View, those have also been accommodated as well on sheet C10. And it looks like the east side of Mountain View connects to Slonaker Drive there on the north. And then there's the requirement about access be restricted to the property just to emergency services until all the pretty much roadway underground infrastructure is completed in accordance with the development agreement. So there are three phases being planned as part of this first edition. And so that access will be limited to each phase. And we have met on site. I know that the neighborhood to the south, Blackwood Addition, has been concerned. There have been a few different issues out there as far as access. There have been certain representatives from our department that have met with the neighbors and talked through some of those issues. So we're currently monitoring this condition into the future.
Okay.
So these are the three phases that are planned as part of this first edition. You can see the phase boundary, the blue line there. The second phase is the red line. And then the third phase is the remainder of the addition. So I wanted to touch briefly on utility and phasing. So water modeling from our consultant HDR did indicate that additional water distribution infrastructure will be required if when phase 3 of the first edition and future editions are constructed. And then per our comprehensive sewer system plan, a segment of sewer main will require correcting as part of the first edition's phase 3 construction and for future Woodbury editions. So essentially phase 1 and phase 2 are fine as they're currently proposed. But once you reach phase 3, there'll be some infrastructure that'll need to be upgraded and the applicant will be responsible for that. So that's specified within the civil design plan set, and it will be a condition of the development agreement of the addition as well. So after reviewing and comparing the preliminary plat and PUD that was approved with the final plat, staff's determination that the proposal is substantially consistent with the application that provided preliminary approval. And the final plat and PUD adequately incorporates all required conditions and modifications, and any changes have been minor. And the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed the final plat and PUD at their meeting. It occurred September 28th of this year, and they recommended approval to City Council with the one condition. The city has identified water sewer infrastructure will be required to serve certain portions of the subdivision. The developer shall design and construct all necessary infrastructure, will not proceed until said infrastructure is completed and installed and accepted by the city for each phase of the subdivision in accordance with the approved development agreement. And with that, recommend that the committee recommend approval of the Woodbury First Edition final PUD and final plat with the condition recommended by Planning and Zoning Commission. I'd certainly try to answer any questions you had.
Would it be appropriate to have the applicant come up at this point? Mr. Wentz, if you would like
Can I
to
just
come
ask
up.
him one question really fast before? I
Sure,
have him
sure,
come up?
absolutely.
And that is, I mean, one of the big issues for the neighborhood people were water off and pouring into other people's property. And so my question is, did that get satisfied to the approval of the city?
Yeah, we've certainly been monitoring that situation. We've been on site multiple times in our engineering department, and we've been meeting with the neighbors on that as well. And so, yeah, it's intended to be directed to the stormwater detention pond in the southwest corner. That's been constructed to a certain extent, so it is receiving water. But until the streets are developed and the lots are developed, all the roof drains will end up being directed to the stormwater system. We have had water issues, and that's all part of the erosion control plan and V ditches that run the water and divert it to the natural kind of channels.
So my biggest concern is that you are the experts, and I just want to make sure that you all are satisfied and it's moving in the right direction.
It is.
Great. That helps me.
Excellent. Okay, we've added Mark Wentz,
Yeah.
the
Mark
developer
Wentz,
to the,
right, give my address, 1004 Dairy Lane, Moscow.
excellent. So we have the possibility for questions. Do you have any? this
I'm
point?
trying to wrap my head around and I'm looking at the notes for how we got to Ashton Lane, the compromise between it being a private street versus it being a public street, but needing it to be public because of our like city parking requirements. I'm trying to think, can you go back to like the full aerial?
Sure.
I guess I just get nervous if we're going to maybe tuck some cool new businesses in the back. And it's nothing, there's always growing pains. It's nothing that we can't get used to as a community, but I do get a little nervous with the idea of there being a one-way tucked between.
Yeah, we might want to go to the larger site plan.
Yeah, zoom me out a little more. Maybe one of the early ones with when it just looks like a dotted line where it's going to end up.
Yeah. Well,
And so we're plugging in. So Slonaker will get extended. And then the idea is that Ashton, by making it a one-way, it'll get us through phase one. And then eventually we'll be able to have it kind of be a ring road. Is that the long-term vision for
it is a ring road. It doesn't come near the neighborhood business in this case. This is Ashton Circles.
Yeah, it's just going to be on this west side. And so this is what they have proposed as being the public parkland dedication here
Okay.
along the west. And so that was reviewed by the Parks and Rec Commission as that future dedication. But yeah, this is the intention of Ashton Lane.
to really just serve
to
as a
come in-
collector
come
for
in this
our
direction.
residential. And so we'd have Slonaker still acting as the main avenue to get our folks, get community in and out of the business area. Is that right? I mean, I'm not envisioning
Yes,
I'm not
yes.
envisioning a Starbucks going in back there, but like, anyone in town will be excited to go see any new
I think it'll be fun. Yeah.
shops that pop up.
Yeah. So Slonaker and what's marked Village Way, which is Woodbury now, Woodbury Drive. So that would take
Okay.
you. So you go in on Slonaker, making a first or the second left there, and wind your way up. I mean, it's really designed to have slow traffic. That's why it's all quirky like this. So, it's not going to be like a great place to just cut off and like jam down
Yeah.
the other side of town. It's
Right.
like, unless you just want to take a leisurely drive. So it's really meant to be a pedestrian dominant
Awesome.
environment.
Yeah. And I just wanted to make sure I understood because I couldn't quite visualize where Ashton was. I was thinking it was tucking in all the way to Orchard, but this helps.
Yeah,
So thank
and
you.
these are the neighborhood business lots here.
Okay,
So
right.
they're surrounding this center green.
Awesome.
And so this will serve more as just a local neighborhood street, but also provides access to the linear park there on the west.
Excellent.
Any other questions? I'll jump in while she's
Go
dreaming.
for it. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I have a series of them here, and one is, now that the construction is going on or soon will be going on,
Right.
there was a commitment that was made during the hearing that they would use Mountain View versus Orchard. Is that being fulfilled? There's been some concern that people on Orchard have actually been talking about construction trucks and such being used on there, but I thought that
Yeah.
until the first house was built, they weren't really going to.
Well, I think the agreement, there was more Slonaker people than Orchard was the way that I recall it. And
A lot of people didn't want it until the first house was built.
they spoke up a lot more, and the Orchard people didn't. And I was standing there, I was like, well, they're either going up Slonaker or Orchard.
But the goal was just to go up Mountain View.
Well, the goal I think was to go to Trail Road and come in
But they have
So
to get to Trail Road.
they
So the question
do.
is, are they going to use Orchard? And I thought they were standing there. I mean, I remember somebody specifically saying, how am I going to trust you that you're not going to drive on Orchard? I mean, somebody was standing right there after the meeting, and I remember sitting there thinking, it's just an issue that came up. And so are you construction trucks going down Orchard or Mountain View?
Okay, there wasn't a requirement that we wouldn't drive on Orchard. There was not anything that was passed. The reason why I think that Sloniker works is because it's blocked right now. So it would be very hard to police, obviously on Orchard. It's like, hey, I'm going to invite the guys to go around, but I think the main idea here is that we're not going in on Sloniker, and we're coming up to Trail and coming in on this road, which is installed now, and the way people are gaining access.
Right. Okay.
So Orchard wasn't included.
It wasn't verbally included, but
no.
it was after the meeting, there was a discussion with somebody who was
okay.
talking with you specifically, and you said, no, we're not going to use Orchard. So there's nothing in writing with respect to that, but it was just the concern of people that Orchard, that it goes up and down and that it's really dangerous because
Yes.
you don't know if the big construction truck is going to come down there before it hits Trail.
I
Anyways,
will encourage people to take Mountain View,
perfect.
but
Thank
they'll
you.
probably take what's convenient.
I bet so. Okay, the other one is, I raised a question there about the xeriscape aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you were going to do the landscaping or the people who buy the buildings.
Yeah, our idea, Maureen, is for us to do the landscaping. I mean, so it has this really cohesive landscape feel that, is common plants and so forth throughout, and there's sort of a repetition of design. The first idea is that, we eliminate most of the grass. In the front of yards, there probably won't be very little or no grass. So then you can put plants on drip, and it just changes everything right there. And, a shrub that gets rooted doesn't need to be watered in the heat of, is like, all day long on a hot day, like a lawn does. So, yeah, I think that it's going to be water efficient. I mean, obviously Moscow's water is high. Our water costs are high. So we want to put in something that's going to, really be efficient. And I think that on almost all the lots, but maybe the estate lots, that people won't need to have a lawnmower is the idea. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is great.
That's good to hear. I know that I don't speak for all of us ever, but that makes me happy. I like the water-wise, conservation
Right.
approach to that.
No, and the xeriscape has come a long ways. It's really looks good.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does. So
Definitely.
the other one is that I don't remember ever seeing either on the plans or something, but there's something there about ADUs. Are you going to plan ADUs in the back of? People can put them back there?
Yeah,
Are you anticipating them? Or?
We allow that. I think that's what we worked
Okay,
out. So
great.
like over a garage or something like that.
I just didn't know if you guys were going to be building it or somebody decided the person who was going to buy it wanted it over a garage.
They can. It's allowed within the zone. It was all that
Okay.
we.
And the other one is the city did come up and pass its climate action plan recently. And so it makes me more conscious of those issues. And so will you be picking whether or not they're going to be gas or electric facilities in there, like particular a stove and such?
Well, I mean, I don't know if there's a big.
It's not a requirement. I'm not
what
telling
we're
you
doing.
that it is.
What we're doing right now is. Now, this is like a builder question, so I mean, not like an energy czar question, because we're just responding to the market. And we think the best range that we're using right now is a dual fuel, where the oven's electric because it cooks more steady, and the top is gas because it usually, for people that have had gas, they like that. But some people have had electric and they want it that way. So we'll give it to them whichever way they want it.
Okay. Also, I tell you that I voted for it in the beginning because I really appreciated your plan in terms of being very conscientious and a whole mixed use of different types of houses in there. And I still stand by that because I really appreciate that a lot. And I also think that you have probably run into more neighborhood concerns than most developers have. And I want to say I appreciate you responding to those in ways that at least address the issues.
Okay, great. No, we've got good relationship with almost everybody out there. Yeah.
Do you have any more questions?
I was trying, my it's struggling to load a 300-page packet. And so I just wanted to clarify. So the 25 additional parking spots is what our existing city formula asks for with these sorts of things, or I'm trying to remember. I'm being haunted by identity right now, and I know we're not looking for parking waivers, and it'll look a little different when you're talking about parking on lots. And so is it 25 for the businesses, or is 25 for the additionals for like
It was,
company in town?
it was just intended to provide public parking.
Awesome. Okay.
So there's a number of private streets that don't have any on-street parking. And
Okay.
it was intended to mitigate that.
So those private streets have no parking on them, a requirement.
The private streets are really the rear loaded alleys. Okay. So just like our alley, they're 20-foot wide alleys, just like we have in Fort Russell area. So you don't want people parking on those because you need.
Or
the
you could
whole
tuck a
20
car, like if my mom comes over, she could park in the
She parks
driveway
behind the
briefly
garage.
and that
She's
sort of thing.
Not
Okay.
supposed to, but yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I
Yeah.
mean, so as a result of that, although somebody might do that, we thought, hey, it'd be nice to sprinkle around just some other
Absolutely.
spots around. So they'll be marked, public parking, and there'll be rules like, hey, you can't just the adjoining property can't just park there permanently or anything like that. So
I am glad you'll have a homeowners association to go to
Monitor
bat for
that.
those things, because those conversations aren't always fun. Yeah, so the parking, as long as we're meeting what our usual formula is for parking, public parking for something like, and I guess it's tricky because it's technically a private park, right? So we're just trying to sprinkle in additional parking for company and things
we
like that.
we really offered it from the beginning as just a
Which I
way to improve it,
Thank
because
you,
we
yeah.
thought, well, if we're going to have ADUs, that could put some pressure on it.
Sure,
If they're also kind of small lots, and just around what we have is we have these little cottage neighborhoods that go around these a green space that's
Mhm.
fully loaded from the rear. If you want to go to someone's house, you're going to have to park out on the public street or find near walkways. We put a couple public parking spaces so that you could visit Mrs. Jones without walking too far.
super.
Because you're not going to be able to pull up right in front of her house on the little cottage neighborhoods. You're pulling into the back, or on a public street where there's a
And walking.
walkway that enters it.
Is there enough space between the garage door and the driveway that someone could park in the driveway?
What we did was we're holding the garages back away from the 20-foot mark 7 or 8 feet, so that you could pull up in front of the door, parallel park, and be out of the 20 feet
I'm just thinking,
theoretically.
her
They're
mom
just like
comes to
what-
visit her. Her mom
just-
comes to visit her, and how do you make that
Exactly.
happen?
Right.
Yeah. So that's why we held the garages back, so that you could get out of the 20-foot zone, which
Yeah.
needs to stay clear for fire access.
Okay.
And this is just a curiosity thing. I think it's the yellow, well, that may be not what it is on the thing, but the ADUs, were they talked about in the beginning?
They were, yeah. I mean, it's included in that table that lists all the setbacks, lot sizes, et
Okay.
cetera. And so those are part of the proposal, was that we, allow
A
eight
very-
ADUs. Yep. And they
I'm
have specific
tickled.
regulations for those. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
I mean, it'd
tickled
be like
by it.
any other residential zone in the city where we allow ADUs and
Yeah.
all residential zones. So
I thought there
I
was-
don't remember it. And it could be that by that point we had gone through this a lot and my brain was full, but I'm really happy about that because we still have housing
Yeah.
shortages, and this kind of any little bit helps. And so I appreciate that.
So Mike, the other question I have on that is there's certain parking requirements with respect to having ADUs, which means they can't park the car on the street, I think. Is there something about that? Can you
it's just
refresh my memory?
off-street parking requirements. So every single family dwelling throughout the city and in this neighborhood as well will be required to provide 2 off-street parking spaces. For ADUs, they're required to provide 1 additional off-street parking space, and that's what the applicants proposed
Got it.
here.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
That's
Thank
sorted
you.
out.
Yeah, because I did not remember hearing it. I just built one in my backyard, and I think it's a great move. So I'm totally supportive of it. It just, what does it all mean? So Thank you.
Any additional questions?
I think you get more than we ever give, but
Yeah.
A good long list.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you very much, Mark. And I think we will take this to the rest of the council for sure. Do we want to say anything about recommending
favor.
approval?
I'm in
Yeah,
favor.
I'm comfortable with
Okay.
do pass recommendation.
Regular agenda recommending approval.
Okay.
Or We have to, don't we? Or can we put it on consent?
You don't have to. We've been processing final plats on consent. I don't know that we've had many final PUD approvals go through on consent, but we have been taking final plats because it's not a public hearing. It's not a quasi-judicial. It's a review for conformance with the conditions of approval of the preliminary plat. This one's a little more complex because of the PUD component in addition. So it could be either regular or it could be on consent.
How does the regular agenda look? Is it going to be heavier than
No,
usual?
we're relatively light.
I'd like to see it mostly because we don't see subdivisions come through very often in town, and I expect we may also get some questions, and I'd
We
like
can,
to see
we
it
can
on
put on
the
record, that's fine.
Yeah,
With the
I'm
recommendation.
sorry. Sorry, you got to come to
Oh,
the
you're
council
fine.
meeting.
Yeah.
but I
You get to
kinda-
come back and visit
You
us.
get to come back.
Yes.
Let's just change our attitude.
Yeah.
You get to come back. Okay, Mike, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate it. Okay, our next item, surprise, is Woodbury First Edition monumentation agreements. I love these. Todd Drage, you're going to be here for a couple of them, man.
Yeah,
So monumentation,
quick.
then development.
that was great. Mike basically went over my entire presentation. To be able to make this quick.
All right, good.
As you spoke to, this is the development agreement for the Woodbury First Edition. Project location and background was covered in the previous slide. As you know, the development agreement is the city's mechanism to formalize the requirements and all the things that are agreed to in the development. We have a standard template that we use and things like public improvement requirements, the security for those requirements, and a 1-year warranty period for them to hold up. The ability of the developer to obtain permits if they provide in-lieu security, and things like as-built drawings and other things remained unchanged. There are some addition-specific language. We went over the parkland dedication. I think Mike showed that on his previous slide. It's a pathway that has been deferred to future editions, but the requirement has been added to the development agreement to formalize the calculations determined by the Parks and Rec Commission. The improvements were also included that Mike just went over. The left turn lane on Mountain View Road. I have some slides on that. I'm not sure if Mike's were better, but I'll show them in a second. The road.
Go back one slide, just, and while we're there, instead of making you go backwards, do you mind if I just interrupt you for that?
No.
What is in-lieu security?
So the development agreement, all the improvements are tied to building permits, and so essentially you have to build all of that phase or all of the improvements in order to obtain a single building permit.
Oh, okay.
And if they haven't been able to get all of those done, then they're able to say, we have a in-lieu security. We weren't able to get a mailbox or a section of sidewalk done. We can put that money down as kind of earnest money to say, we're going to
That's
work
very
on that over
helpful.
next year, but we'd still like to be able to build houses in the wintertime.
Okay.
So it's a short window here in Moscow. It allows them to be able to do some of those things without cramming it in. So the other improvements Mike went over, there's the roadway frontage improvements on Mountain View. I do have to point out an error in the development agreement that I included in your packet. I misunderstood what was discussed in the public hearing, in the preliminary plat. And so in your packet, it says the developer would pay for the design and 50% of construction costs. And it should say that the city and developer will split the total costs of the design and construction. So there's costs associated with the design. And it was always agreed to that the city was going to pay for half. And so that will change in the development agreement that goes before council, or it's in that packet. And then Mike went over, there's a couple of potential issues with the will serve of the third edition. And so that's included in this development agreement, just that those need to occur prior to or during the third edition.
And that
Or,
means
the third phase.
infrastructure.
Yeah, there's a little
That's nice.
section of, exactly. A little
Okay.
section of sewer. And so Mike went over those previously. The phase one is that blue outline, 17 lots, and the stormwater and detention basin. The next phase is those 17 lots just to the east, the west of that. Then the third phase is the rest of it. I think it's 45 lots. Also included in the third phase is those potential improvements for the will serve to be able to serve sewer and water for the addition. The Mountain View frontage improvements are put into the first phase. This is a preliminary design, and then also is the left turn lane. And so with that, this is the city's standard development agreement with those few changes. We recommend approval, and I can stand for any questions you have.
Questions?
Okay, let me just ask you another one.
Sure.
Mainly it's because I received a lot of calls about that. I want to ask you, I'm going to probably go through everybody that gets up here. is that to your, because I know you've been out there several times to talk to the neighbors. Is it your position that that the developer is meeting the expectations of what he agreed to, and that that you're satisfied with the responses that have been implemented or been proposed or added or whatever?
Absolutely. Yeah. These subdivisions, they take a lot, and it's not always perfect, the process, but the developers have been great to work with. So is their engineer. And so have all the folks that have been there, been really understanding. We've met with them, addressed some of those issues.
Good.
I wanted that on the record. Thank you.
You bet.
Excellent. Okay, this has got to go on regular with the rest of it, right?
No, go consent.
Let's do consent with this one.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. You don't have to come back to the meeting yet. Okay, our next item is the addition development agreement, Woodbury First Edition Development Agreement.
Oh, sure. Sorry, I did them backwards. This is the monumentation agreement.
Oh, perfect.
Sorry about that.
Holy cow.
We could have caught it too. I didn't even
Okay,
notice.
We didn't
well,
catch it.
It's fine.
Yeah, development agreement. Yeah.
The council already approved the development agreement. That was what or the committee, I should say. That was what we just discussed. So we can move on
Yes.
to the monumentation agreement.
Monumentation
Right.
agreement. So, thank you. This is the monumentation agreement, which is simply an agreement between the city and the developer to allow them to build the subdivision and not have to set the interior pins per state code. Just requires that we obtain a security so that we can use that to place those pins in the event they're unable to do so. This is the city's standard language, just with the names updated to the specific development and the specific security. And so with that, we recommend approval of monumentation agreement. I can stand for any questions.
If we can do consent, I'm saying consent again.
Yep, consent.
Okay, awesome.
I'm
All right.
fine with it. I just don't really get it. I don't really get the interior prep will not be set until after final plat. Okay, so it's just instead of
So technically under state law.
dropping them twice.
Yeah, under state law, when you get a preliminary plat approval, then you go build the subdivision, you set all the monument pins, and you come in and final the final plat.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Developers like to have that final plat approval, so state law allows you for the opportunity to pay a security instead of setting those interior monuments and pins, because obviously they're going to be destroyed during construction. And so you can
Gotcha.
provide that security, enter into an agreement that says you're going to put those pins once
Promise I will,
construction is
okay.
complete, and then that allows us to approve the final plat, allow the plat to get recorded, and then lots to be sold.
Perfect. I
Excellent.
get it now. Great. Consent sounds awesome.
Cool.
Okay,
Cool.
good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Mr. Wentz. Okay, our next item is the Virgil Phillips Farm Property Lease Agreement Renewal. David Schott. Good evening, sir.
Does it mean I could go claim jump? I'm kidding. It's not the same as those sorts of land.
Yeah, I
agreements.
don't think
don't-
we
should I-
should bring up claim jumping.
Yeah. Great. Cool. We'll talk offline.
No.
Kidding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me this afternoon. This is the Virgil Phillips Farm Property Lease Agreement. And so just for members of the audience and stuff, Virgil Phillips Farm is not within the city proper. It's a 160-acre park located approximately 4 miles outside of town, north of Moscow along Highway 95. This property is owned by the city. However, Latah County has leased the property since 2000 for the benefit and use of children of Moscow, Idaho for recreational purposes. The park is currently managed by Latah County Parks and Recreation. The city of Moscow has been happy with this agreement since 2000. Both the city and Latah County wish to renew this agreement for the next 5 years, beginning October 1, 2022, which is passed by a little bit, to September 30th, 2027. One of the items that we do budget for each year within the last 5-year agreement, we do pay the county $5,000 a year for expenses related to maintenance and operation of the park. And so that continues, that amount hasn't changed.
Okay.
The proposed lease agreement has been reviewed by Latah County and approved by the Latah County Board of Commissioners. Staff's also recommending approval of the agreement. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the lease agreement.
I love that park.
I do too. My only question, if I may.
Sure.
I remember volunteering out there in high school a lot, and oftentimes Miss Erickson would say, if there's traffic behind you, go all the way down to Viola. Like, don't try to take the left-hand turn, go all the way down to Viola, turn around and come back. Because it can be a little hairy. And so I just want to make sure I understand the players. If we ever come to a place where Phillips Farm is so hopping that we need to be talking about something like a turn lane or something bigger. I mean, we're talking about, that's like highway district conversation. That's like ITD conversations plus the county. It's not on my wish list right now to see a turn lane for Phillips Farm, but like as it grows in popularity, I do worry because it's pretty gnarly. But the players who would need to come to the table for something like that, with it being a city-owned thing, you're still talking about all the highway districts and the county property and ITD. Is that right?
Not highway districts, just ITD.
Just
it's a state
ITD.
highway.
Okay. Because the highway district handles everything that's not state highway. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood because that haunts me to this day, and I still will often go down all the way to Viola and turn around if you're in a line of cars to turn left there. So great. I don't have concerns with the agreement. I'm glad to see that we have help managing it.
Can you also give us an update about the use of bikes out there? Remember, there was this whole question about the use of bikes. And while I have you here, and would you mind just educating us on the use of bikes out there now?
Councilor Laughlin, thank you. It's been a little while since I've been updated on that, but my understanding is they got council approval and are under construction.
Oh, okay.
I get the minutes from all the different groups out there, and so last I read is they're currently constructing those.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I like partnerships in general. This is a good one. And I think 5-year leases with this kind of $5,000 a year is a good deal. So I think probably consent with this.
Oh, yeah, except for the fact that it's so fun that we would love to have everybody in the world know about it. So let's just, they can read it in the notes.
Yeah, okay.
Consent, totally.
Consent,
Thank
please. David, thank you.
Thank you.
You don't leave, though. We have some more fun with you. Our next item is recommendation to name the pickleball courts at Gormley Park the Damon Burton Pickleball Courts. David, again.
Well, thank you once again. Again, this is a recommendation to name the pickleball courts at Gormley Park the Damon Burton Pickleball Courts. Just to get the conversation started, I'm out there on evenings on occasion, and those things are booming. So there's a lot of people utilizing those courts, and I've heard a lot of good things about them. So just some background. The Parks and Recreation Commission received a letter on February 15th, 2022, requesting to recommend officially naming the Gormley Park Pickleball Courts the Damon Burton Pickleball Courts. This was done to honor Damon Burton for his 30 years of service to the Parks and Recreation Commission. He also had a large role in the planning and construction of the pool, the Hamilton Indoor Recreation Center, and the Moscow School District community playfields. He also had a role in planning numerous parks, community garden, playgrounds, you name it, over the last 30 years, he had something to do with it, with the Parks and Recreation Commission. And finally, for his steady and consistent presence on the Parks and Recreation Commissions. So back in the nuts and bolts here, Resolution 2004-19 allows for facilities within parks to be named separately. And so this might be a restroom, a shelter, pickleball courts. In the event someone wants to recommend naming the parks or facilities after persons, several criteria need to be met. In this case, for this individual, a person must have contributed significantly to the acquisition or development of the park or recreation facility, to the Parks and Recreation system overall, or to the community. So the name must also be recommended and accompanied by a biographical sketch, which is provided in your packet. That was provided by our former Parks and Recreation Director, Dwight Curtis. So under that resolution, on May 26th, the Parks and Recreation Commission approved opening up a 60-day public comment period. That was published in the Daily News on June 18th and July 16th of 2022. We didn't receive any public comments, and so the Parks and Recreation Commission at their August 25th meeting recommended approval to officially name the pickleball courts at Gormley Park the Damon Burton Pickleball Courts. Fiscal impact. For we name it, we got to put a sign up. And so to keep consistent with our current signs throughout the park system, we budget about $3,000 for that. That'll be expensed out of the park's expense budget in fiscal year 23. And so to summarize, the staff recommends approval to officially name the pickleball courts, the Gormley Park, the Damon Burton Pickleball Courts. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I love it. We do.
It's kind of the nature of Damon's service is that we would get, he kind of served below the radar. It stands to reason nobody said anything. You know, it just is kind of in keeping. And I think this is great. And I hope he's still around to appreciate it. Or at least that do we invite family to that kind of thing? What do we do? Is there
Smash a bottle of
a
champagne on
celebration
the-
or?
Yeah.
Do we do something?
Certainly for probably if we have
acknowledgement?
signage and do a dedication, we would invite Damon or his family members to be present.
So cool.
That's
Or something
cool.
like that.
Yeah. I know it's a long trek from Michigan, but even if
We can send the
send
invitation.
pictures or whatever, yeah, that'd be cool. All right. Consent,
Oh my gosh, how fun.
but I also think we ought to not
Yeah.
put it on consent because it'd be fun to have
I
it in the
know.
official minutes, but
It'll come out in the press release when we're having the announcement of
Okay.
the
awesome.
installation of it.
Consent,
Okay.
please. All right, David,
Thank
thank you.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
clarifying the process too. I didn't know the process by which
Yeah,
things
that's
got
cool. Yeah.
named, so that's kind of cool.
Thank you.
Have a nice afternoon.
You too. Mr. Belknap, do we have anything else?
Nothing else this afternoon.
All right. Are we good to adjourn?
We're good to adjourn.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.